I'm Maddie Foster, and just moments ago, my life was shattered when my husband publicly humiliated me at a high-end restaurant. Now, I'm on a mission to expose the lies that nearly destroyed me, and the fight for my freedom is just beginning. Stay with me as I reveal how I turned betrayal into my greatest strength. Don't miss a single moment. If you're ready to witness a journey of resilience, like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. I stepped into La Lumiere, the restaurant's opulence overwhelming me as soon as I crossed the threshold. Dressed in an elegant gown that I had chosen with trembling hope that tonight might be different, I couldn't shake the uneasy pit that had settled in my stomach. The soft glow of crystal chandeliers and the hushed murmur of refined conversation only heightened my sense of isolation. I knew tonight was supposed to be a celebration, a dinner with my husband, Ethan Calloway, and his imperious mother, Margaret. But as I walked toward our reserved table, my heart pounded with an inexplicable dread. La Lumiere, a prestigious fine dining establishment nestled in the heart of San Francisco, exuded an air of exclusivity. The restaurant was alive with the chatter of elite guests and the clink of fine china. Every detail, from the crisp white linens to the meticulous floral arrangements, spoke of luxury and perfection. Yet, amid this refined setting, I felt profoundly out of place. My mind was a swirling storm of conflicting emotions, an undercurrent of resentment, anxiety, and a fragile glimmer of defiance. I was not alone at the table. Ethan, my husband, sat with an air of nonchalance that bordered on arrogance. His eyes were cool and calculating, as if he were constantly weighing his next move in a game only he knew the rules to. Beside him, Margaret loomed like a silent sentinel, her piercing gaze and condescending remarks a constant reminder of my supposed inferiority. The guests around us, barely aware of our private drama, added to the suffocating pressure of the evening. It all began when Ethan, without any preamble or discussion, ordered a lavish meal priced at $5,000. I remember the way his voice carried a casual command as he declared that I would be expected to foot the bill. The shock of his words stung more than the chill of the air conditioning in the posh dining room. I hesitated, unable to believe that the man I once loved could treat me with such blatant disregard. "Is that what we agreed upon?" I asked quietly, trying to mask the tremor in my voice. Ethan's response was immediate and unforgiving. "You know your place, Maddie. You're here to support me, not to question my decisions," he snapped, his tone leaving no room for debate. As if on cue, Margaret's icy laughter cut through the murmurs of the room. She added, "A woman should always know her role, never challenge the head of the family." The words burned. I felt the sting of humiliation like a physical blow. My protest grew firmer, and in that charged moment I refused to comply with his demand to pay for the extravagant meal. The restaurant fell into an uncomfortable silence as eyes turned our way, and I realized that I had just ignited a public spectacle. Then came the moment that would forever shatter the remnants of the life I once believed in. In a fit of uncontrolled rage, Ethan abruptly reached out and yanked the chair from beneath me. I lost my balance, my arms flailing as I stumbled backward. Before I could even recover, he hurled his dessert, a meticulously plated creation, directly at my face. I remember the shock of the cold, sticky substance splattering over my skin, the taste of bitterness mingling with the overwhelming humiliation. The gasps from the onlookers were deafening, and for a brief, agonizing moment, I was frozen in time. Standing there, drenched in humiliation and dessert, something within me shifted. As I wiped the remnants of cake from my face, I caught a glimpse of myself in a polished surface. A woman who had long hidden behind a mask of compliance, now staring back with eyes that burned with newfound clarity. For the first time, I saw Ethan not as the charming husband I once adored, but as a man who reveled in my degradation. In that moment, as the restaurant staff rushed over in a flurry of concern and the murmur of shocked whispers filled the room, I made a silent vow. I would no longer allow myself to be a pawn in Ethan's cruel game. My life, my dignity, would no longer be dictated by his whims. With a steadying breath, I calmly gathered my scattered composure and stepped away from the table. I could feel the weight of every judgmental stare, yet I moved forward with a determination that surprised even me. Outside, the cool San Francisco night enveloped me, a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere inside. I walked slowly, each step echoing in the quiet street as I reflected on the catastrophic unraveling of my marriage. The pain was raw and searing, but it was also the catalyst for change, a bitter turning point that promised a future where I could reclaim my true self. I stepped out onto the empty streets of San Francisco, the city's neon glow painting long, uncertain shadows on the pavement. The night was quiet and eerie, a stark contrast to the chaos of the restaurant. As I wandered aimlessly, every step felt like a painful reminder of the life I had just left behind. I couldn't help but reflect on the marriage that once sparkled with promise, a marriage in which Ethan had been charming, supportive, and endlessly loving. I recalled the gentle smile he used to give, the warm embrace that once made me feel cherished. But somewhere along the way, that magic had faded, replaced by a cold, calculating cruelty that I could no longer ignore. The memories of our early days played out in my mind like a bittersweet film. I remembered how Ethan's eyes would light up when he spoke about our future together, and how every moment felt like a secret treasure meant just for us. But those moments were now shattered, replaced by the harsh reality of tonight's humiliation. The weight of shame, pain, and deep realization pressed on my chest as I walked the deserted streets. I felt as if I were drowning in a sea of regret, each step echoing the loss of the life I had known. As I rounded a corner, I found myself in front of the penthouse I had once shared with Ethan. The building loomed like a silent prison, a lavish, cold structure that now symbolized my confinement. I stood there, staring at the illuminated windows, each one a reminder of the glittering facade that masked the darkness within. The opulence that once dazzled me now felt like a gilded cage, a constant suffocating reminder of the man I had married and the love that had turned toxic. My mind raced with conflicting emotions. I longed for the comfort of familiarity, yet I felt an overwhelming urge to break free, to reclaim the fragments of my dignity that had been trampled upon. I knew in that moment that I could not stay any longer. The thought of returning inside, of facing Ethan's icy glare and his cruel commands, was unbearable. Instead, I took a deep, steadying breath and turned around. Without a backward glance at the penthouse, I pulled out my phone and called an Uber. The act felt both liberating and terrifying, as if with that simple decision, I was severing the last tether to a life I no longer recognized. The cool night air brushed against my tear-streaked face as I waited, every second stretching out with the promise of a fresh start and the terror of the unknown. The ride was a blur of city lights and silent reflections. I stared out the window, lost in thought, trying to process the gravity of what had just occurred. The Uber's hum beneath me was a constant reminder that I was moving forward, however reluctantly. When the car finally pulled up in front of my parents' house, a mixture of relief and apprehension washed over me. I hesitated before ringing the doorbell, my heart pounding with both the hope of solace and the fear of judgment. The door swung open, and there, in the soft glow of the entryway, stood my mother. Her eyes widened in shock as she took in my disheveled appearance, my makeup streaked with tears and remnants of dessert clinging to my dress. In that moment, the warm familiarity of home clashed with the raw vulnerability of my present state. I could feel the sting of embarrassment and sorrow, yet beneath it all burned a quiet determination. Standing on the threshold of my parents' home, I realized that this was the beginning of my journey to reclaim everything I had lost. I was no longer willing to be a prisoner of a love that had turned into a cage. The decision was clear. Even if the fear of Ethan's retaliation loomed large, I had to choose to fight for myself. As my mother's surprised gaze met mine, I knew I was at a crossroads. The night had been long, and my mind was still reeling from the events that had forced me to break free. I could only wonder, should I dare to fight back against the fear that still threatened to pull me under, or allow that terror to dictate the rest of my life? That question would haunt me, yet it was one I had to confront. The next morning, I awoke in the quiet comfort of my childhood bedroom, a space that once cradled my innocence and dreams. The familiar pastel walls and worn wooden floors offered a gentle reprieve, yet I couldn't shake the overwhelming sense of loss. I felt both safe and lost at the same time, as if the remnants of my former life were whispering from every corner. In that moment, the warmth of nostalgia collided with the cold truth of my current failure. At my parents' cozy suburban home, every room stirred memories of better times. The aroma of my mother's homemade coffee mingled with the faint scent of old books lining the shelves. Despite the comfort that these surroundings usually brought, I was haunted by the stark reality of what I had endured. The grandeur of my former life with Ethan now seemed like a cruel illusion, and I couldn't help but feel that I had failed to live up to the image I once held dear. That morning, my parents sat me down in the living room, their faces etched with worry and disappointment. My father's steady gaze and my mother's gentle yet pleading tone urged me to reconsider my decision. "Maddie, leaving Ethan might seem like the easy way out, but perhaps there's still a chance for him to change," my mother whispered, her voice soft and full of hope. My father, too, spoke of second chances, suggesting that maybe I was overreacting. Their words, meant to comfort, only deepened the ache inside me. I realized that their belief in the possibility of redemption for Ethan was a bitter pill, for I now understood that I had been nothing more than his safety net. The truth hit me hard as I sat in that familiar living room, surrounded by the relics of my childhood. I had built my life around Ethan's promises, sacrificing my own identity to shore up his ambitions. Now, the devastating clarity of his true nature washed over me. He had never treated me as an equal. Instead, I had been there to prop him up, to cover for his shortcomings, to be the cushion that softened every fall. The realization was as painful as it was liberating. If I left, he wouldn't just lose a wife, he would lose the very foundation that kept his crumbling empire from collapsing. Later that day, when my best friend Jordan, a determined journalist with a knack for uncovering harsh truths, finally arrived at our parents' house, he carried with him a weighty piece of evidence. In hushed, urgent tones, he revealed a damaging financial report that laid bare the dire state of Ethan's business empire. The report was a damning indictment of the lavish lifestyle he maintained. It showed that beneath the glittering facade, his companies were drowning in debt. Every number, every margin of loss confirmed what I had begun to suspect. I was never his partner. I was merely his safety net, silently bailing him out time and again. The shock of that revelation sparked a fire within me. As I listened to Jordan's words, a cold determination replaced my earlier despair. I realized that leaving was not a defeat, but a necessary step to reclaim my dignity. The thought of filing for divorce, once unthinkable, now glowed with the promise of liberation. I understood that the battle ahead would be brutal. Ethan would fight dirty to retain his power and control, but I no longer had the strength to be his crutch. I was ready to fight back. By the end of the day, the decision was made. I resolved that I would file for divorce. The weight of my years of submission was finally lifting, replaced by a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in a long time. Yet, even as I embraced this newfound resolve, a lingering chill of apprehension remained. I knew Ethan wouldn't let me go easily. His pride and his empire were at stake, and he would stop at nothing to keep his grip on both. As twilight fell and the room grew dim, Jordan's concerned eyes met mine. "Maddie," he said softly, "you need to be prepared. Ethan will fight dirty to keep his power, and he won't hesitate to use every trick in his book." His words resonated with a painful truth that I could no longer deny. The battle ahead would be steeped in betrayal, public ridicule, and legal warfare, but I was determined to reclaim my life, even if it meant standing alone. I knew that tomorrow would bring the next step in this uphill journey. I would meet with Sophie Adams, a top divorce lawyer renowned for her tenacity, to chart out the legal strategy that would finally free me from Ethan's stranglehold. As I sat there, enveloped by the silent comfort of my parents' home, I felt the stirring of a resolve that was slowly transforming into unyielding determination. I stepped into the sleek, modern lobby of Sophie Adams' law firm in downtown San Francisco, my heart pounding in my chest. The marble floors gleamed under the soft, professional lighting, and the hushed murmur of hushed conversations in the background made the atmosphere feel both intimidating and impressively efficient. Clutching my purse tightly, I forced myself to walk with purpose, even though I felt small and vulnerable in that moment. I was here to fight for my freedom, and despite every doubt gnawing at me, I knew I couldn't turn back. Inside the firm's conference room, I met Sophie Adams, a striking, no-nonsense lawyer whose reputation for taking on impossible cases preceded her. With sharp eyes and a calm, measured tone, she listened as I recounted the events of the previous night, my voice trembling as I described the humiliation, the betrayal, and my final decision to break free from Ethan's grasp. Though my words tumbled out in a rush of raw emotion, I could sense a glimmer of understanding and determination in Sophie's gaze. "You've done the right thing, Maddie," she said firmly, her voice steady and reassuring. "But be warned, Ethan Calloway is not someone you can defeat easily. He's built an empire on manipulation and power, and he'll stop at nothing to keep his legacy intact." Her words hung in the air like a challenge, a warning that the battle ahead would be grueling and relentless. I left Sophie's office with a mix of resolve and trepidation, thinking that the legal fight was just beginning. Yet, barely an hour later, my phone erupted with notifications. I stared in disbelief as a slew of messages flooded in. A new article on one of San Francisco's leading online news outlets was painting me as nothing more than a gold digger, a schemer out to ruin Ethan's impeccable reputation. The headlines screamed accusations and insinuations, twisting every detail of my struggle into a narrative that made me appear as the villain in my own story. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the comments and shares, each notification a brutal reminder that Ethan had weaponized the media against me. The article wasn't just a piece of sensational journalism, it was a calculated attack, a strategic move in his long game to discredit me and protect his empire at any cost. The more I read, the heavier the weight of betrayal pressed on my chest. I had believed that the truth would eventually prevail, but now it seemed that Ethan was pulling every string in the media to ensure that my image was forever tarnished. The negative press hit me hard on multiple fronts. Cafe Haven, the small but beloved coffee shop I had built from the ground up, began to suffer almost immediately. Loyal customers started to cancel their reservations, and social media buzzed with disparaging remarks about my character. I could hear the low murmur of disapproval, the whispers of patrons who once admired my determination, now questioning my integrity. The cafe that had been my sanctuary was now in danger of collapsing under the weight of a public relations nightmare. In that moment, I felt a surge of anger mixed with a bitter taste of humiliation. I realized that Ethan's assault was not a one-time act of cruelty. It was part of a larger strategy to control every aspect of my life. He had meticulously crafted a narrative to portray me as the antagonist, and with every passing minute, his grip on the story grew stronger. The realization was both devastating and empowering. If he could manipulate the media to turn everyone against me, then I had to take back control of the narrative. I sat down at a quiet corner table in Cafe Haven, the ambient hum of an almost empty shop serving as a backdrop to my swirling thoughts. I couldn't afford to let this continue. Ethan was playing a long game, and I had only just begun to understand the depths of his deceit. Determination replaced my earlier shock, and I resolved that I would not be a pawn in his cruel schemes any longer. I needed to strike back, harder and smarter than ever before. I spent the next few hours poring over every detail of the article, searching for inconsistencies or traces of fabrication that could expose Ethan's machinations. My phone buzzed intermittently with new updates, each one a reminder of the relentless assault on my reputation. Despite the barrage of negativity, I clung to the thought that the truth was on my side. I could feel the fire of resolve building inside me, a quiet, fierce determination to expose Ethan's financial crimes and the extent of his manipulation. As dusk approached and the soft glow of the San Francisco skyline began to seep through the cafe's windows, I made a silent vow to myself. I would not let this media onslaught define me. Tomorrow, I would take the next step in this battle by gathering every piece of evidence I could find to expose Ethan for the fraud he truly was. With Sophie's words echoing in my mind and the bitter taste of betrayal still fresh on my tongue, I knew that my fight for freedom was far from over. I woke up that morning to chaos. My phone was buzzing nonstop, a relentless barrage of notifications and messages from news outlets that had turned my life upside down overnight. Every headline screamed accusations. I was being painted as a greedy gold digger, a woman out to destroy Ethan Calloway's legacy. The shock of it all left me reeling as I stared at my phone. The screen lit up with hostile comments and breaking news alerts. I felt isolated in my temporary hideout, my modest apartment now a reluctant refuge from the storm that had erupted around me. The space around me was dim and silent, a stark contrast to the cacophony in my mind. My apartment, usually a comforting sanctuary, now felt like a prison of my own making. The walls, though plain, seemed to close in on me as I paced the room, struggling to process the overwhelming negativity. The tension was palpable. I was alone with my thoughts, but the media storm made it seem as though the entire world had turned its back on me. Before I could sink any further into despair, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Jordan, my steadfast best friend and an intrepid journalist, whose face was etched with worry and determination. He wasted no time. "Maddie, you won't believe what I just heard," he said urgently, thrusting a tablet into my hands. On its screen, a series of emails flashed. Emails that Ethan had leaked, emails that falsely implicated me in an affair with Jordan before we even separated. The implication was as cruel as it was calculated. My heart pounded as I scrolled through the doctored messages, each one a stab at my integrity. In that instant, the full scope of Ethan's manipulation hit me. Not only had he orchestrated a public smear campaign, but he had now crossed a line by implicating me in infidelity with someone I trusted. The shock was unbearable. I could feel the anger building inside me, simmering beneath a veneer of disbelief. It wasn't just about the lies, it was about the betrayal of trust and the deliberate attempt to ruin my reputation. As if that wasn't enough, the fallout from the scandal began to manifest quickly. Loyal customers of Cafe Haven, the small but cherished coffee shop I had built with so much heart, started boycotting it. The once warm buzz of friendly chatter was replaced by hushed whispers of disapproval, and I received countless messages of warning and condemnation. The very foundation of my world was crumbling, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. To add insult to injury, a cease and desist letter arrived from Ethan's lawyers, demanding that I settle the matter privately or face even more damning exposure. The weight of it all was crushing. I could no longer contain the torrent of emotions swirling inside me. In a moment of pure, unfiltered rage, I grabbed my phone and hurled it across the room. It crashed against the wall, shattering both the device and my fragile calm. As I stood there, breathing heavily, I made a silent vow. I would not let Ethan's cruelty define me. I would fight back, and I would do it on my own terms. After the outburst, I sank into the worn couch and dialed Sophie, my steadfast divorce lawyer. Her calm, measured voice on the other end of the line provided a fleeting sense of stability amid the chaos. "We need solid proof that Ethan fabricated these cheating allegations," she advised firmly. "Once we have that, we can turn the tables and expose him for the fraud he is." Her words lit a spark of hope in me, hope that maybe, just maybe, I could reclaim my story and my dignity. With renewed determination, I resolved to take the offensive. I spent the rest of the morning poring over every detail of the leaked emails and cross-referencing them with any available evidence that could expose the digital tampering. The idea was simple. If Ethan was manipulating the truth, then I would use his own secrets against him. I needed to dig deeper, to uncover the truth behind these malicious emails and prove beyond doubt that they were nothing more than a carefully constructed lie. As I sifted through the data with Jordan by my side, our conversation turned from despair to strategy. He promised to reach out to a trusted IT expert, someone who could verify the authenticity of the emails and potentially uncover traces of manipulation. I clung to his words like a lifeline. Every moment that passed without a resolution only intensified my resolve. I was no longer the woman who had allowed herself to be humiliated. I was transforming into someone who would fight for every scrap of truth and every ounce of dignity. By the time the late afternoon light began to fade into the cool blue of early evening, I felt a stirring of hope amid the wreckage of my reputation. The media onslaught was relentless, but I was determined to turn it around. I wasn't going to be defined by Ethan's lies. Instead, I would expose his deceit and reclaim the narrative that was rightfully mine. As the day drew to a close, Jordan's call came through once more. He had reached his IT expert, Lucas Bennett, who claimed to have discovered anomalies in the emails. This was the breakthrough I needed. With a tentative but firm resolve, I prepared myself for the next phase of this battle, knowing that Ethan's next move was imminent and that I had to be ready to counter it with every piece of truth at my disposal. I arrived at the tech workspace in downtown San Francisco with a mix of trepidation and hope. The room was modern and minimalist, its cool blue lights and soft hum of computers setting a tone that was both clinical and strangely reassuring. I wasn't alone. Jordan had accompanied me, his eyes scanning every detail as if expecting the truth to emerge at any moment. We had come to meet Lucas Bennett, an IT expert known for his meticulous work in digital forensics. I could feel my heart pounding, each beat echoing the desperate hope that Lucas might hold the key to clearing my name. Lucas greeted us with a firm handshake and a focused gaze as he led us to a workstation cluttered with multiple monitors and stacks of technical documents. The atmosphere was tense, yet hopeful. As I settled into a chair, I couldn't help but feel that this meeting might finally turn the tide. I listened intently as Lucas began to explain his process, how he had scrutinized the leaked emails, comparing metadata and timestamps, searching for any signs of tampering. His voice, calm and measured, was a stark contrast to the chaos I had experienced in the last few days. After what felt like an eternity, Lucas turned to us, his eyes lighting up with a mix of excitement and determination. "I found it," he said, almost in a whisper. "There are clear traces of digital manipulation here. These emails weren't sent from a genuine account. They were fabricated, altered deliberately. Ethan Calloway engineered this entire smear campaign against you." His words struck me like a bolt of lightning. Every accusation, every cruel headline now seemed like pieces of a twisted puzzle that Ethan had constructed to maintain his control. My pulse raced as I absorbed the evidence Lucas laid out before us: detailed logs, altered IP addresses, and discrepancies in the server timestamps. It was undeniable proof that the emails were nothing more than a calculated fabrication. I felt a surge of relief mingled with anger. Finally, I had leverage against the man who had ruined so much of my life. Yet as the weight of this discovery settled in, Sophie's earlier warning echoed in my mind. If we released this proof too soon, Ethan might manipulate the legal system to suppress it. Even as I clutched Lucas's findings like a lifeline, I couldn't shake the reality that Ethan's influence was vast. His PR team was already doubling down, pushing more negative stories about me, ensuring that every twist of the narrative painted me as the villain. I could almost feel the pressure of his relentless campaign bearing down on me, but in that moment, I resolved that I would not be cowed. Determination crystallized within me as I listened to Lucas and Jordan debate our next move. I knew that simply holding on to this evidence was not enough. I needed to expose Ethan's deceit in a way that left no room for counterarguments. A risky plan began to form in my mind. I would confront Ethan in a live interview, forcing him to face the truth in front of the public. The idea was dangerous, a bold move that could either shatter his carefully constructed facade or backfire disastrously. But I had reached a point where I could no longer hide. I had to trap him in his own web of lies. "Jordan," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "we need to set up a live interview, one where I can confront Ethan directly. I'm going to force him to expose the truth about these fake emails. It's the only way to flip this narrative." Jordan's eyes widened with a mixture of concern and admiration. "That's incredibly risky, Maddie," he cautioned. "But if anyone can do it, you can. I'll reach out to a reputable journalist who can give you a fair platform. We have to show the world the real Ethan Calloway." I nodded, feeling the fire of resolve course through me. Every painful moment, every humiliating encounter had led to this point. With Lucas's proof securely in hand and the support of Sophie echoing in my thoughts, I prepared myself mentally for the confrontation ahead. I knew Ethan wouldn't sit back and let this slide. He would undoubtedly counterattack with every resource at his disposal. And so, as the meeting drew to a close, I promised myself that I would not let his next move catch me off guard. Just as I was beginning to organize my thoughts for the next step, my phone buzzed with an urgent message from Jordan. He had managed to contact an IT specialist from his network, someone who could further validate Lucas's findings. This confirmation was the breakthrough I desperately needed. Even as I felt a glimmer of hope, a chill ran down my spine. The news that Ethan had gotten wind of my plan was already circulating. I knew, without a doubt, that he was now plotting his own counterattack. With the evidence in my grasp and the plan taking shape, I realized that the coming days would be the most challenging yet. The divorce trial was looming, and every move I made would be under intense scrutiny. I had to stay ahead, vigilant and unyielding, ready to expose Ethan's lies and reclaim my life. The battle for my future was far from over, but I was determined to emerge victorious, no matter the cost. I walked into the San Francisco Superior Court, with my heart pounding so loudly I felt it echo in my ears. The atmosphere was electric, a charged mixture of anticipation and dread. Reporters and spectators crowded the hall, their murmurs and flashes of cameras turning the courtroom into a media spectacle. This was it, the final battle that would decide my fate, and I knew that every word spoken today would reshape my future. The courtroom was a grand, imposing space with high ceilings and rows of polished wooden benches. Sunlight streamed through tall, narrow windows, casting long shadows that seemed to mirror the deep divisions in the case. The air was thick with tension. Every whisper, every rustle of papers heightened my anxiety. I could see the judge seated at the front, a stern figure whose gaze promised impartiality. And across the room, Ethan's attorney sat confidently with a stack of documents at his side. I felt both exposed and resolute. I was not alone in my struggle. Alongside me sat Sophie Adams, my steadfast lawyer, whose calm determination was a beacon amidst the chaos. Across the aisle, Ethan appeared, his face a mask of controlled arrogance that now seemed to crumble under the pressure of the moment. The courtroom was filled with a mix of curious onlookers, sympathetic supporters, and critical voices, all waiting for the showdown to unfold. The tension reached a fever pitch when Ethan's legal team presented their so-called evidence, the fake emails that purported to show my unfaithfulness. The room fell silent as the prosecution laid out the narrative, accusing me of betraying Ethan's trust and, by extension, being unworthy of any settlement. I exchanged a brief, loaded glance with Sophie, a silent acknowledgement that we had been waiting for this very moment to strike back. Then, the turning point arrived. With a measured, confident tone, Sophie began presenting Lucas Bennett's forensic report. The evidence was irrefutable. The emails had been doctored by Ethan's team, their metadata and timestamps proving that they were nothing more than a carefully orchestrated fabrication. I felt a rush of vindication mixed with sorrow for the years lost under his manipulation. As Sophie methodically laid out the technical details, the judge's interest was visibly piqued. He leaned forward, questioning the credibility of Ethan's evidence and probing into the inconsistencies that Sophie so expertly highlighted. The tension escalated dramatically as Ethan took the stand. Under rigorous cross-examination, his calm veneer began to crack. His responses grew halting, and during one particularly intense moment, he inadvertently admitted, with a tremor in his voice, that he had indeed orchestrated a media smear campaign against me. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom, and I could feel the weight of that admission, like a stone lifting from my chest. It was as if the truth had burst forth, dismantling the facade he had so carefully constructed. In the aftermath of that explosive moment, the courtroom seemed to hold its breath. The judge, having heard both sides, finally spoke with authority. His ruling was clear and decisive. The evidence overwhelmingly favored me. Ethan was ordered to pay a substantial financial settlement, and worse for him, he now faced the very real possibility of legal repercussions for fabricating evidence. The words resonated through the room, marking the beginning of the end for his reign of deceit. As I stood there, still processing the magnitude of the verdict, I felt an immense, almost indescribable relief. The oppressive weight that had burdened me for so long was finally lifting. I watched as Ethan, his face contorted with rage and disbelief, stormed out of the courtroom. In that moment, amidst the flashing cameras and scattered whispers, I knew that I had won a crucial battle. Yet even as the judge's gavel struck a resounding finality, a part of me remained wary. I understood that this legal victory was but one chapter in my journey toward reclaiming my life. Walking out of the courtroom, I felt an unexpected lightness, as though I had shed a heavy, suffocating cloak. I realized that while the trial had ended, my journey was far from over. I would now have to rebuild my life from the ruins of my past, a task that filled me with both hope and apprehension. I knew that the public, the media, and even Ethan himself would continue to cast shadows over my newfound freedom. Yet, as I stepped into the cool, brisk San Francisco air, I allowed myself a moment to savor the victory. The bitter taste of betrayal was slowly giving way to the promise of renewal. I could already envision a future where I was no longer defined by Ethan's manipulation, where I would rebuild my reputation and restore the honor of Cafe Haven. That vision became my guiding light. Even as I contemplated the long road ahead, I recognized that this trial was not just about the legal battle. It was about reclaiming my identity and asserting my worth. The courtroom drama had exposed Ethan's true nature and affirmed the strength that I had found within myself. Now, free from his grip, I was determined to forge a new beginning, to rebuild a life that was authentically mine. I sat at my favorite corner table in Cafe Haven, cradling a warm latte as I watched the steady stream of customers return. The storm that had once ravaged my life seemed to have finally passed. The cozy cafe which I had poured my heart into now buzzed with renewed energy and purpose. The familiar clink of coffee cups and the soft murmur of friendly conversation filled the air, and for the first time in years, I felt a deep sense of freedom. Cafe Haven had transformed from a quiet refuge into a lively haven, bustling with patrons who came not only for my coffee, but for the warmth and resilience it symbolized. The rich aroma of freshly ground coffee beans mingled with the subtle hint of pastries, creating an atmosphere that was both inviting and celebratory. Every corner of the cafe seemed to echo my own journey of rebirth, a testament to the fact that even after the darkest storms, life can begin anew. Today, I wasn't alone in my victory. My best friend, Jordan, who had stood by me through every twist and turn, joined me at the counter. His eyes sparkled with excitement as he slid a neatly folded business proposal across the table. "Maddie," he said, his tone earnest, "I found an investor who's not only interested in what you've built here, but also eager to expand Cafe Haven into a new location. This could be the fresh start you deserve." His words resonated deeply within me, stirring a mixture of hope and hesitation. As I unfolded the proposal, a flood of memories washed over me. Memories of a time when I believed in love and loyalty, and of the painful lessons that ultimately led me to reclaim my life. The proposal was more than just a business opportunity. It was a symbol of trust and belief in my own worth. But for a long time, I had been so consumed by the shadows of my past that taking a risk now felt both exhilarating and terrifying. I sat there, lost in thought, wondering if I had the strength to trust myself after everything that had happened. Doubts whispered in my mind. Could I truly let go of the past and embrace a future built on my own terms? The scars of betrayal and humiliation still lingered, a silent reminder of the painful chapters I had endured. Then Jordan leaned in close and said, "Maddie, don't let the past define your future. You are not Ethan's pawn anymore. You've already won the battle. Now it's time to claim your destiny." His words struck a chord deep within me, cutting through the lingering remnants of fear. In that moment, I felt a surge of clarity, a realization that my future was mine to shape. With trembling hands but a resolute heart, I picked up the pen and signed the deal. Every stroke of the signature was an act of liberation, a bold declaration that I was ready to move forward. I was no longer defined by the toxic chains of my past. I had reclaimed my dignity, and now I was prepared to invest in a future filled with promise and possibility. Over the next few days, Cafe Haven began to flourish even more. The investors' support brought in new opportunities, fresh ideas, and a revitalized energy that spread throughout the space. The cafe became a living symbol of my newfound independence, a place where every cup of coffee served was a reminder that I had risen above the darkness. One crisp afternoon, I stepped out onto the cafe's balcony and gazed out over the San Francisco skyline. The city, with its sprawling urban tapestry and twinkling lights, seemed to whisper endless possibilities. I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and hope. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I wasn't burdened by the past. I was free, and I was finally in control of my own destiny. There was no grand promise of another chapter to follow. This was the satisfying conclusion of my journey. I had fought, I had lost, and I had ultimately triumphed. Standing there on the balcony, I knew that my life was now mine to define. The future was bright, and I was ready to embrace every moment of it. As I reflect on this incredible journey, I'm filled with gratitude for every moment that led me to reclaim my life and rediscover my true worth. From the depths of humiliation and despair to the triumphant courtroom showdown, I have learned that breaking free from a toxic past can spark the beginning of a brighter future. Cafe Haven now stands as a testament to resilience, independence, and the power of starting over. My story is a reminder that even in the darkest times, hope can be found and a new chapter can begin. I'd love to hear what you think about this journey. Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let me know if you've ever experienced a moment of transformation. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of brave, resilient souls. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss an update on our next inspiring tale. Thank you for being a part of this journey with me. Your support means the world, and I hope this story inspires you to embrace change and cherish every new beginning. Until next time, stay hopeful, stay determined, and remember, every ending is just the start of something beautiful.